The poet. Bury me in a nameless grave. I came from God, the world to save. I brought them wisdom from above, worship and liberty and love. They slew me, for I did disparage therefore religion, law, and marriage. So be my grave without a name, that earth may swallow up my shame.
Hey there, welcome to the Crowley Conspiracy. I'm Andrew Arnett, and this is indeed the first episode of the podcast series. So let's get things going by diving into who exactly Aleister Crowley is and what makes him relevant in the world today. Now, Crowley is a hard nut to crack. He is the living embodiment of Winston Churchill's famous quote, "A riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma." And maybe Crowley himself coined that phrase, for there is a conspiracy theory floating about that Crowley acted as Winston Churchill's body double during the war years. This is, of course, indicative of the mystery that surrounds the man. Indeed, Crowley's penchant for photobombing the world's most famous conspiracies is uncanny and is an ongoing concern of mine. The fact that he is somehow tied in with the alien agenda is of particular interest to me, and just one example of his ubiquitous influence in our culture. Monikers that have been attached to Crowley's name include poet, novelist, painter, philosopher, political theorist, political propagandist, occultist, ceremonial magician, mountaineer, and founder of the religion Thelema. But I'm just getting started. Crowley has also gained notoriety as a cult leader, a bisexual, a drug user, homosexual, misogynist, womanizer, prophet, charlatan, guru, and even a base British gentleman. He is the self-proclaimed Beast 666, the Antichrist, and the world's wickedest man. Indeed, he has been accused of murder and even the killing of children. As well, he has been called a white magician, a black magician, a sorcerer, and a Satanist. More recently, his work as a secret agent and double agent for British intelligence has come to light. What do we really know about this man? Edward Alexander Crowley. He would change his name to Aleister Crowley, was born to a wealthy family in Royal Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, England, on 12 October 1875. His father, Edward Crowley, who lived 1829 to 1887, was part owner of Crowley's Alton Ales, a lucrative brewing company that allowed him to spend his time as a traveling preacher. Born a Quaker, Edward Crowley converted to the Christian fundamentalist group Plymouth Brethren. It was a tradition in their household every morning after breakfast for Edward to read a chapter from the Bible to his wife and son. Crowley's mother, Emily Bertha Bishop, who lived 1848 to 1917, had a difficult relationship with her son, especially after the passing of her husband, when Crowley was just 11. She dubbed Aleister the Beast, a name which he happily adopted. He inherited a third of his father's estate and started misbehaving at school, rebelling against Christian morality by taking up smoking, masturbation, and hiring prostitutes for sex. Nonetheless, Crowley was a sharp student and enrolled in Trinity College, Cambridge in October 1895, majoring in philosophy, then English literature. He changed his name from Edward to Aleister, became president of the chess club, published poetry in literary magazines, and became an avid mountain climber. Despite a consistent first-class showing, Crowley left Cambridge in 1897 without graduating. Crowley's interest in alchemy led him to Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, leader of the occult society Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He was initiated into the order on 18 November 1898 and took on the magical name Frater Perdurabo, with its accompanying motto, "Brother, I shall endure to the end." He then moved into a luxury apartment in London, befriended fellow occultist Alan Bennett, and experimented with ritual drug taking and ceremonial magic. Crowley moved to Foyers on the shores of Loch Ness after he purchased the infamous Boleskine House in November 1899. There, he embarked upon a series of magical operations known as the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. Its purpose to invoke one's guardian angel. This included the summoning and binding of 12 kings and dukes of hell. The ritual required at least 6 months obligation, but Crowley broke off before completion, with some researchers believing he neglected to even bind hell's entourage, resulting in the release of demonic entities into our world. The reason for Crowley's sudden departure from Loch Ness was due to rumblings within the hierarchy of the Golden Dawn. A schism had developed between its Paris-based leader, MacGregor Mathers, and members of the Golden Dawn's London Lodge, which included high-profile initiates like William Butler Yeats. Yeats did not care for Mathers' autocratic rule and chafed at Crowley's libertine bisexual flamboyance. After initiating him into the Second Order, Mathers dispatched Crowley back to London to take possession of the London Lodge. The matter was then brought to court, where the judge ruled in favor of the London Lodge, as they had paid their rent. Afterwards, Crowley embarked on a series of world travels, starting with a trip to Mexico City. This was followed by journeys to Japan and Hong Kong, and then in 1902, an attempt to climb K2. Crowley and his expedition reached 20,000 feet on the Kashmir mountain before turning back. Returning to the Boleskine House in 1903, Crowley married his first wife, Rose Edith Kelly. In 1904, Crowley and Rose went to Cairo, during which time Crowley wrote the Book of the Law, According to Crowley, the book was dictated to him over the course of 3 days by a disembodied voice that called itself Awaz, the messenger of the Egyptian god Horus. The book proclaimed Crowley was the prophet of the new Aeon, which humanity was about to enter into. The cornerstone of its philosophy was summed up in the quote, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." And the new religion was to be called Thelema. Crowley would go on to publish many more notable and important occult books, including Conks on Pax, Essays in Light, The Book of Lies, The Diary of a Drug Fiend, Magic in Theory and Practice, Moonchild, and The Book of Thoth. In 1907, Crowley co-founded the AA, a new occult order to act as successor to the Golden Dawn. In 1909, he began production of the biannual periodical entitled The Equinox. By the end of the decade, his inheritance started to run out, and his marriage was falling apart, due, in part, to Rose's alcoholism. She would subsequently be institutionalized. In 1914, Crowley moved to the United States for a 5-year stint. There, he became involved in New York's pro-German movement and wrote for the propaganda paper The Fatherland, whose goal was to keep the U.S. out of World War I. Later on, critics would accuse Crowley of being a traitor to England for these actions. More recently, writers including Richard B. Spence and Tobias Churton have asserted that Crowley was in fact an agent for British intelligence. In New York, he was working as a double agent for Britain, writing political screeds to ridicule the German lobby in hopes of actually goading U.S. involvement into the war. Crowley died on December 1, 1947, at the age of 72 in Hastings, Sussex, England. But his myth and legend, like a reanimated zombie, lives on, and his presence has become more pronounced than ever before. It can be felt in today's music, film, literature, politics, philosophy, popular culture, and lifestyles. But what is more interesting is that his influence is subtle, not overt. Ask most people, and they have never heard the name Aleister Crowley. Crowley's impact is one of the hidden hand, the power behind the throne, and the master who pulls the strings of the puppet. In that dark netherworld, his name pops up often. He sunk the Lusitania, the inspiration for Mein Kampf, the real Jack the Ripper, grandfather to George W. Bush. These are just some of the theories floating around. My initial exposure to Aleister Crowley was in grade school when I acquired a copy of the Beatles album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. There on the front cover in the top row, second from left, is Crowley's face, ensconced in a group of many famous faces. You might not think much of it, and back then I didn't. But there is a rumor, a conspiracy theory, if you will, that the Sgt. Pepper namesake, of which the band has dedicated their album, references Crowley himself. There is much evidence given to bolster this proclamation. One being that Crowley died exactly 20 years before the album was released. And as the Beatles sing, it was 20 years ago today when Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. Then there was Ozzy Osbourne's Mr. Crowley. As Ozzy would sing, Mr. Crowley, what went on in your head? Oh, Mr. Crowley, did you talk to the dead? In high school, I had a proper introduction to Crowley via Colin Wilson's encyclopedic The Occult, A History, a comprehensive survey of the occult and its major players, including the big three of modern occultism: Helena Blavatsky, George Gurdjieff, and Aleister Crowley. For my taste, I gravitated more towards Gurdjieff, but was nonetheless intrigued by the beast himself, suspecting that he had the truth in his possession, though he spun it in tangled webs. I went on to be a professional writer, and for the past 10 years of my life, have been devoting my time to the topic of Aleister Crowley, producing a book and discussing Crowley in numerous appearances in the media, including Travel Channel's World's Most Uncanny and on Coast to Coast AM, to name a few. One of the conspiracies about Aleister Crowley I find most interesting is the claim that Crowley was the first person in our modern age to make contact with alien beings. In my research, I found out Crowley was living in a studio apartment in Greenwich Village back in 1918. It was in this apartment, located on 64A West 9th Street, where Crowley said he channeled the interdimensional being called Lamb and drew the portrait that resembles a gray alien. Crowley had a vision of a new approach to magic more suited for the fast-paced 20th century and the coming atomic age. He even changed the spelling of magic to magic with a K, so as to differentiate this change. In Magic Without Tears, Crowley writes, "My observation of the universe convinces me that there are beings of intelligence and power of a far higher quality than anything we can conceive of as human, that they are not necessarily based on the cerebral and nervous structures that we know, and that the one and only chance for mankind to advance as a whole is for individuals to make contact with such beings." One of the most important disciples of Crowley was Kenneth Grant, who sees our planet as imprisoned and walled in by the power of Saturn. By way of Typhonian, OTO, communications with New Isis can provide a gateway through the barrier. Trans-dimensional entities known as the Gray Ones have manifested through one offshoot of this occult Typhonian order current, whose energies are believed to be fundamentally Lumerian. Grant has claimed that Crowley sealed this transmission line by way of the portrait of Lamb. Lamb being the leader of the Gray Ones. So why have sightings of the Gray Ones or Gray Aliens been ubiquitous since the latter 20th century? Grant believes it is the direct result of the Parsons-Hubbard workings in the 1940s. This dynamic duo took on the formidable task of manifesting Babylon in the flesh, a magical child embodied in human or perhaps quasi-human form. This is also the goal of Grant's own occult Typhonian order, although the motivation there differed, as the aim was to open an outer gateway for traffic with interdimensional entities. The Babylon working, as well as preliminary magical workings during the early 1940s, had its corresponding effect in the scientific and political sphere, resulting in the first atomic test explosions, as well as the political upheavals of 1945. Grant claims these nuclear explosions ruptured the subtle membrane of the Earth's magnetic atmosphere. What resulted was a massing of the shades, and 2 years later, in 1947, a swarm of UFOs, ETs, and paranormal activity flooding our world, which continues to this day. Along with this came a plethora of psychological and nervous disorders, as well as increased dream activity, influencing artists, psychics, scientists, and writers like Philip K. Dick. In 1946, rocket scientist Jack Parsons, with the aid of L. Ron Hubbard, later to found Dianetics, performed the Babylon working, a continuation of the Amalantra working. This resulted, according to Thelemites, in yet another interdimensional portal opening, or maybe even a widening of the gateway first discovered by Crowley. In the Babylon working, Parsons wasn't trying to contact Lamb, but rather the whore of Babylon herself, which would help him summon a moon child. Apparently, someone forgot to close the door behind them. Certainly, 1947 saw, in UFO terms, all hell break loose, starting with the Kenneth Arnold UFO sightings over Mount Rainier, Washington on June 24th, 1947. And then, of course, later that summer, the notorious Roswell, New Mexico, alleged UFO crash and retrieval of alien bodies. Since then, there has been a steady stream of UFO sightings. Recent congressional hearings have attested to the veracity of the claims that these UFOs are real. What's more is that some government whistleblowers are eluding these entities are interdimensional in nature. Perhaps Crowley was right all along, and maybe he is the reason why they are here in the first place. These are the questions we will be examining in future episodes of The Crowley Conspiracy. Please follow and subscribe. I'm Andrew Arnett, and thank you for listening.